Hello. We're going to start about Symfony2 components. Before beginning, my name is Xavier Lacot. I'm working in a small company which I created 3 months ago, which is called Joli Code. Before this, I was working as a PHP technical leader in a French company called Clever Edge, and I've already had some occasions to give talks about Symfony in the last editions of SymfonyLive. Apart from these professional topics, I am also the president of the French PHP User Association, which was holding the Forum PHP on Tuesday and Wednesday. So just yesterday I was right sitting here. Anyway, so today we are going to talk about the ecosystem of PHP. In 2012, PHP is now 17 years old. A lot of improvements arrived in the language. And we can see each year new transformations and new things available to the developers. After this, we'll make some feedback. We will go back in the story and see that maybe 7 or 10 years ago, we developed with PHP completely differently than we are doing now. And it's a problem for companies, because some companies have paid a lot for applications which are very important for them, and they cannot afford paying again for the same applications, but in a modern PHP version. For this company, the evolution of PHP is bad. They would prefer PHP not to change. The target, the goal of my conference, of my session, is to explain how we can help improve these projects by using Symfony components and how Symfony is particularly well adapted to these situations. You just have to know some small things, some tips on how to use these components, and it will make your life easier when you want to use them. And finally, in the last part of the conference, we'll see how to use these different components on a specific application which I found in my archive from 10 years ago. So before beginning, how many of you use a framework, so I guess Symfony, on a regular basis? Okay, that's a lot, but not everyone. And how many of you must deal in your company or in the companies of your clients with applications which do not work with frameworks or with PHP products, which are completely hard-coded manually? So some people here. Good. Well, I think this will be interesting for you. The first part. So some things about PHP. I guess that all of us know it, but PHP is first a language made for the web. It's very pragmatic, which is sometimes good, very good, and sometimes very bad, because some choices have been made which were pragmatic but not very clever from a duration point of view. PHP 5 is out since 2005, so 7 years ago, and during the last 7 years it has a lot evolved. It has changed. PHP is one of the most used languages on the web. I found some statistics which say that PHP is around 77% of the first million websites in terms of traffic of the web. So a lot in front of Java, .NET, and other platforms. So I selected some well-known names. One could also cite Wikipedia or other platforms which are really famous. So the first target of PHP is solving problems by using the fastest solution possible. PHP 5.3, we saw a lot of new components, a lot of new concepts, sorry. First, the usage of the namespaces really changed the way we are using PHP and the way we are writing object-oriented code. We saw other constructs appear in the language, which were already available in other languages. So, for instance, lambda function, closures, for archives, which make the life of the developer a bit easier, a bit different than it was 3, 4, 5 years ago. These namespaces, for instance, have a lot of a really big improvement on what we were doing 5 years ago. 5 years ago, we were writing very long class names in order to try to avoid collisions when using libraries in a very large project. It was very often that we had to deal with class names collisions, and now with namespaces, it happens really not so often. We are able to use short class names with a very precise naming possibility. The only problem with the namespaces is the usage of the use statement, which you don't have to forget. So PHP has evolved, but PHP still now evolves. In PHP 5.4, which is already available and which you should use on your platforms, several improvements have been made. Performance improvements, deprecated functions have been removed, but also some new constructs that are not still available in web frameworks, but will be available in 1, 2, 3 years, and which hard-coded PHP applications that do not use web frameworks won't be able to use so soon. For instance, the instance method calls could be really useful and could make the code we write a lot shorter. The possibility to have array dereferencing, like we see it in the last example, also could make us save some lines of code and write more straightforward code. So during the last years, we saw a lot of new things in the language itself, but also in its ecosystem. By ecosystem, I mean in the libraries that use the language PHP, in the tools which live in the sphere of PHP, and we have also seen a lot of new versions of these frameworks. Symfony2 is a completely different framework than Symfony1. The Zen Framework 2 will be completely different to the Zen Framework 1, maybe not to Symfony2, but anyway. And we also have seen a lot of new tools, dependency resolution tools like Composer, for instance, code analysis tools, quality tools, continuous integration tools, and more recently, code fixing tools, code transformation tools. The structure of the projects also have changed. By structure, I mean the way people work together to create PHP projects, open source PHP projects. There are more and more discussions between the web projects, between web frameworks leaders, and this allows us to create more standard ways to work and more standard ways to write code. PHP becomes more professional. There were a lot of frameworks 5 years ago, and now there are a lot of frameworks. It has not changed. There are still a lot of frameworks, but one thing is new, is that they can work together. I told that the situation is really living in the PHP world. The situation evolves very fast. One very good example is PSRO and the class loader solution, which allows to create a standard way to organize the libraries of code. It's not really a technical specification. It's more an agreement that PHP technical leaders of large projects have concluded, which allow them to organize the libraries that they write in the same way. Thanks to this, it is possible today to very easily use libraries from one framework in another. The idea between Xavier was to match the structure of the code on the hard disk to the naming of the classes. So there are two variants. It's not really important, and I get that you already know this. One other thing which shows that the ecosystem of PHP is really alive. We have seen last year PHP Composer. It was not launched in 2012, but in 2011. And Composer is a tool for managing dependencies. Giorgi Bocciano and Nils Adaman must have talked about it sooner in the day, and I get that maybe you have seen this conference, which must have been very interesting. Composer is a very good solution for managing dependencies between the parts of a project. If I want to use this library, then I must use this one and this one and this one. This is very useful. And before this, there was no solution to express these requirements apart from using the source control manager solutions like Git submodules or Subversion equivalents. Packages.org is a repository of packages. So it lists almost 1,500 packages in the PHP world, and it goes very fast. It grows very fast. So how to use Composer? Composer is a very clean and simple solution to load external libraries and to express the dependencies between libraries. With only one file, one single composer.json file, the description of the library that we are currently writing or the project that we are currently writing can be expressed, and all the requirements for the project to work well can be explained. These 3 lines here just show that this project will require PHP 5.3 and several libraries like the Symfony framework and JSON-Leak from Celdec. And only by writing one single command, all these dependencies will be installed, and all the dependencies of these dependencies will also be installed. It's just like an apt get install on Debian or something like this. This is a very simple example of what you can achieve with Composer. You can create also pre-install or post-install commands, which will clear the cache or I don't know what, a lot of things. You can set configuration variables. It's almost also a build tool. It's really useful. And if you don't use it in your projects, just have a look at it. In 1 or 2 hours, you will understand how you can use it and how much it will help you. It's really great. Packages, so the repository of packages behind Composer is a wonderful resource, a wonderful way to find new packages and new libraries in the PHP world. There are only very high quality components available, and it's just like Peer 10 years ago. Peer was a very good repository for high quality packages. Now packages is the equivalent, but in a modern version. So the PHP solution for this has changed and has improved. So this is just a look of packages, and I'm searching here for an image library, and I'm going to find a lot. So as a conclusion, PHP is not, as a conclusion of this first part, PHP is not going to be in 1, 2, or 5 years a professional language. PHP is a professional language, and this is maybe a bit different to what we have been used to here since a lot of years. There are completely professional tools available, continuous integration, unit test libraries, unit test suite tools. There are tools for analyzing and measuring the quality of the code, the number of copy-pastes in a project, the cyclomatic complexity, and so on. And since 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a little more, Fabien has also open sourced a new tool called PHP Code Source Fixer, which helps fix coding standards, not code source, coding standards, which helps fix coding standards mistakes, so that the code which developers share always has the same look. And that's really a great tool. It makes the quality of the project a lot better. Apart from the technical points, the language itself or the tools which the language uses, also the people in the PHP world have grew. They are more mature now. They have learned PHP when they were at school, when they were trying things, they were discovering the web and so on. And now a lot of people have worked during 5, 6, 10 years on PHP, and they know a lot about it. They have made mistakes, and they don't want to reproduce these mistakes. So it explains that the PHP community also grows and also makes progress. So baby PHP is going to be a strong and fast elephant. Maybe it's not very close to PHP, but it also helped a lot during the last 2 or 3 years to see new libraries appear. The social coding platform, GitHub, gathers more than 2 million projects. 150,000 of them are PHP projects. It's a wonderful platform to collaborate around PHP code. Are there people in the assistance who didn't know GitHub before? Okay, you're lucky. I often meet people, developers, PHP developers or clients who don't know GitHub at all. They never use it. And that should be compulsory for developers now to know this platform. Okay, so this was just to tell that PHP is evolving, has evolved a lot during the last 5 or 6 years. And for a company, evolving so fast, it's not that good. I searched in my laptop and found a very old code that I wrote. Well, this is a code that I wrote during the summer in 2002. And you will maybe throw me rockets or I don't know, but it's really not really good. First, you can see that there is a HTML and PHP mix. We access directly to the superglobals, which is not really a good practice. We extensively use the array-based operator, which helps hiding notices. Okay, sorry, I don't want to see notices. It's not useful for me. And also, if you read the code, you will discover that the URLs that the user can use to access the application are completely tied and really strongly tied to the structure of the code on the file system. To a URL matches one file, and if you want to create a new page, you have to create a new file, which is named exactly the same name. It's not a good practice, too. And finally, we have some duplication of code. Even if it's minimal, in larger applications, we will see a lot more duplicated code. So this was what we were doing in 2002. And I'm really sorry, but I did it. And I guess that some of you did the same. I'm almost sure indeed. It was not that bad at that time. Well, it's not good, but that was 10 years ago, and there was no PHP file. There was no very strong object model. There was a weak object model in PHP 4, but not very strong with class visibility and so on. Developers which started to create applications at the time only had a few tools, a few language constructs to build very good applications, and now they are blocked. And now they are blocked when you want to improve it. So what is not very good today was great yesterday. I was rather happy to have written this code. So how do we do to improve things which were good yesterday but only very bad today? Maybe 2 years later, after I wrote this code, the first versions of the PHP frameworks appeared. We saw Zen Framework, Code Igniter, maybe not in this order. Symfony was a bit before the others, but anyway, all in the same lap time during 2004 and 2007. All these frameworks appeared and proposed solutions to create structured applications with a way not to duplicate code and with a rapid application way of coding applications. At the end of 2005, Symfony2 was available, and I was one of the lucky users at that time. And I remember that all the developers were so happy to discover new things each day. Oh, do you have seen there is a cache system which is just working with a YAML file? It's wonderful. And there are unit tests. I never read about unit tests, but it's a Java thing and it looks to be good. I'm going to use it. Well, it was Lime. It was not very good, but it was Lime. Have you seen MVC? What is it? And the PHP world started to use good tools and to try to create better applications than only working applications. Working applications were not sufficient when we had used a framework for the first time. But very fast, maybe in 2 or 3 years, the community discovered that Symfony2, Zen Framework 1, and so on, frameworks were not sufficient to build very effective and very maintainable applications. For the developers who have created applications before 2007 using Symfony, for instance, I'm sure that you all have one project that either you have stopped or either you don't want to work on anymore today because you think that the code base of this project, even if it was very well written at the time using a framework, it's not good today. It also has got some age. There were several problems in Symfony2. Well, I won't list all of them, but there were problems with the community also, because a lot of developers didn't understand first that we were here to create very good applications with a very good framework, and that the quality standards should be high. A lot of developers continue to develop in PHP like they did before, and they created crappy applications, crappy plugins also. A lot of plugins were really shit. And it was not very good. And there were also the problem of the performance, but I won't tell much. So here we are today. We have created applications in 2002 with only PHP, and it's very bad. We have created applications in 2007 with a framework, 2008 with a framework, which was the best solution available at the time. And we think that today it's really bad, and it won't be possible to work like this during 1, 2, or 3 more years. So how do we do to improve things and to try to go a bit further? We have to migrate and to improve the overall quality of our projects. So, Precondition, we are working since more than 5 years on a project. There is a very large code base, a lot of functionalities. Of course, our application has had a small success. We have a lot of users, a lot of data that we will have to migrate if we want to change the technical platform. And we have a very competent team on this technology. Companies which were created 5 years ago and which developed a lot with Symfony2 are not that happy that they have to pay for training their developers and to change all their code base and the way they work today. But also, they are concerned that new developments on this historical platform are slower and slower, that there are performance problems. Sometimes just doesn't work. It's just not performant enough. And it's hard to improve things. It's hard to make all the things more productive, more sure, more efficient. And we are in a world where everything goes faster and we want more. So there are several solutions to change. This is the reality of these guys who have created an application 5, 6, 7 years ago. They are not happy with what they have. They know that there is something better, and they would like it. But, well, it's just not possible so. So the first strategy when you want to change things is to trash everything. Well, just throw away the code and start again, writing from the first line, using a web framework, Symfony2.1.dev. A very modern solution, maybe a bit unstable, but very modern. And well, you will have the most modern solution. It will be the best way to create a new application. But you have to rewrite everything. Symfony2 is not compatible with Symfony1 and is particularly not compatible with the code we wrote 10 years ago. That will be a problem. Anyway, you will have a very solid and modern framework for the next 6, 7, 8 years until 2020. We will be very old. You can leave away also the crappy old code base. A lot of developers who are forced to work on a 10 years old code base just only want to go away. And for them, rewriting everything from scratch is a perfect solution because they can finally play with code, which was not possible for them, and just feel more happy. But you will have to wait before your application is available because you will have to rewrite everything. And maybe if it's a very large application, your team will spend 6 months, 1 year, maybe 2 years. It depends on the project. This will be a very risky project. What if the team implodes during the project and finally the lead developers don't like the web framework which has been chosen, and finally they think that they prefer the way they worked 10 years ago. It's very risky for a company leader to accept to trash everything and restart from scratch. Therefore, I wouldn't advise you to do that. It's too risky, it will put a lot of pressure on your team, and it might lead to a disaster. And your boss will have to pay a lot and will wait for new functionalities for your clients. And these functionalities will only come in 1, 2, or 3 years now because you're rewriting everything. Therefore, I would rather advise you to prefer a gradual approach and to rewrite things, but not everything at once. In the last projects that I did, when I had to deal with such situations, to give advices to my clients and to understand how their application work and how they have to do when they want to improve the level of quality of the application, I would have liked to tell them, okay, trash everything, it's only a big bag of shit, and we start again from scratch. It's not possible for them. So we decided to go step by step. Step by step, how do we do it? I just want to use one part of the framework, but which part do I first drop and replace? It's very hard to see this. Luckily, Symfony comes with Symfony components, which are small parts of the framework, small, very independent parts of the framework. And thanks to this, we can achieve an evolution on a very old project using very modern software bricks, software parts. It's much less risky than rewriting everything, and everybody's happy. The developer can write on new techniques, new technologies, and the business people are also happy because they still have a working platform, and we tell them that this is now evolutive. So how to do this? In several steps. The first obvious step will be to switch to PHP 5.3 or PHP 5.4 right now. First, because PHP 5.2 is not supported anymore. And second, because modern web frameworks extensively used the functionalities of PHP 5.3. I looked at the statistics last week, and at the moment, almost 2 platforms on 3 are based on PHP 5.2 in the first million of PHP websites in terms of traffic. PHP 5.3 only represents 30% of the platforms. It's very strange. So the first step when you want to use a modern framework is to change the version of PHP and debug your code for your old code continue to work correctly or almost correctly on this new version. So how do you do this for Linux users, Debian users? Just update your distribution if it's a very old one, but it's not PHP related. And then when it's update, just update the packages, which will take you 5 seconds. apt get update and upgrade, and that's done. Mac users, go grab the very good packages which lib creates and which have perfect solutions for the developers. We can tell them kudos. If I meet them after, I will pay them a beer because they really help the community. And Windows user, well, just leave. Step 2, once the language is up to date, you have to create a new foundation, not to trash the old foundation of your application, the old code base, which is not very nice to see now, but was good 10 years ago and is still working. But you have to create a new code base on the side of the historical code base in order to be able to build new things on this code base, on this platform. And every time you will write new code, every time you will add new functionalities, of course, don't write it in the old code base, in the old way of coding, but use the Symfony2 framework, the new components that you will use. The best way to start is to use these 3 components. We'll see the detail later. And this allows to start easily. You can use these 3 components very easily without a lot of complications in your projects. So how do we do this? First, you will have to install these components. We have seen that we could install these components using Git submodules or Subversion sub-repositories, but well, we could also use Composer. It's done for that. So grab Composer, just create a small composer.json file, declare the new dependency that you want to use. So in that case, we want to use at least PHP 5.3, and we want to use 3 PHP libraries, three Symfony components, which are class loader, dependency injection, and HTTP foundation. And after a small composer.py install, our old project now has 3 new libraries available which can be used in the developments. Well, it's not so straightforward. There are still some things to do, but we'll see what. So what did we do in this slide? We just declared that we want to download and install 3 Symfony2 components. What are these components? Class loader will allow you to load classes magically, well, automatically, using the PSO specification. Dependency injection will help you create objects on a standard model in the same way, almost always the same way, or with a repetitive pattern, which will help create a standard way of working in your team. And finally, HTTP Foundation will help you to handle HTTP requests. If you are updating a website project, of course you are working with HTTP and you want to improve the situation. Sorry. Okay. So we have to read a little. Okay, we'll see all these three components later. Once we have installed this, one thing is great, it's that we do not have to require manually these libraries. We just have to use the autoloader function of Composer. Just include one file, which is generated by Composer when we install new files, and the dependencies will be all available. The classes of the dependencies will already be available. For instance, if we want, for example, if we want to use the request class of the HTTP Foundation Symfony2 component, we'll just have to use the class name and create a new request from the globals. What does create from globals? Create from globals analyzes the request and copies from the superglobals into a request object, and this will represent, it will abstract the way we access to the request. So it's time to change our historical code. If you remember, we had some lines, so I dropped a few lines between, but we had these two lines, which were, I first get the page name, and then I generate a file name from this page name. Well, we can change the first line, still not the second one, but we'll see later how to. And when we change it, we will use a request object, which perfectly accesses to the, well, reads the superglobals and makes the data available to the developer. Step 4, there is no step 4. You are finished. Here we have used Symfony components, and we have improved the quality of our code. If you want to improve the quality of your whole project, just have to do this with all the components available. They cover most of the common technical problematics of web applications. And if you have specific problematics like connecting to a LDAP repository or using a database and so on, we just have to use modern PHP libraries, so bundles, for instance, or other libraries which are not bundled, and you will be able to use them directly. So the process is always the same. Integrate a component and begin to use it. If you want, change old code base to use it. You will have to do this, change the code base with some of the core components and refactor your code. And when you write new code, of course, do it using the components that you have installed. Only by doing this, in a couple of weeks, you can really improve large code base. You can change the way libraries are loaded and the way they are used. So very fast, a tour of the Symfony2 components. So Symfony components, I already told it, but it's a set of independent libraries which you can use completely separately. Well, there are some dependencies between some of them sometimes, but some of them are completely independent, and they do not rely on third-party libraries. It's a very high-quality code components, and Symfony2, the framework, is based on these components, is made with these components. These components are the bricks of your new platform. You will use them in your old platform, and you will do all your best to remove all the old code and only have remaining these bricks and the new code that you write that will use these bricks. This is a way to improve an existing platforms without exploding everything. So the complete list is available on the Symfony website, and you will find technical libraries, technical components which help work on almost everything. So here are the components that you will get. If you really want to migrate an existing application, you can use well, you will usually use these 8 components, sometimes also the configuration component, but it's luxury. If you want to use more components than this, well, maybe it's a better idea to start directly on Symfony2 and find another way to use Symfony2. But if you only want to change a little in your application, it will be hard to use more than these 8. So, for instance, class loader. I already told that it magically loads libraries using PSS0. The migration process. First, change the organization of your class to reflect the usage of PSS0. So rename stuff, move stuff. You won't change code. You just will change the way class names are written. You can automate the process by using some tools. It's easy. And then configure the class loader. Configuring the class loader, that just will mean create, instantiate a class loader object, and register namespaces. For instance, here, I've renamed a very old class, which was prefix LDAP connector. I just have renamed it to client. I've put it in a namespace, prefix/LDAP, and I just have now to declare to the class loader that the prefix is located in the SSC path. And automatically, the class loader will be able to load the file containing a class when I require it, when I want to use it. The console components, it's your best friend. It must be your best friend when you want to write cron jobs, when you want to write asynchronous tasks, or just when you want to have a way to get some statistics or console command line access to your application. It's perfect component for doing this type of things, and you will stop writing raw PHP code in PHP files executed by the command line interface of PHP. You will just want to use the console component once you have used it. So how do? We first install the console component. Okay, easy, update the dependencies, and it's installed. And then we just have to write commands. For instance, here I rewrote feed grabbing command. It's rather fast. Well, we are missing some use statements, and this class inherits from the command class, and the execute method does stuff and prints things to the output. We also have to create manually the executable ourselves, and with this, after fixing the permissions, we'll be able to launch the commands. And in our whole project, we are using the class loader, we are using the console components, and we are now able to use all classes that we might have written in a technical environment when we use Symfony2 components. And it is funny to do, and it works well. Our project has improved from a technical point of view. We can continue with dependency injection. So it's not the story of drugs. If we take a sample of an old school function prototype, we can see that there are several parameters. And this is a bad habit to work like this, and particularly to pass a resource in the prototype of a method. Because what if you want to refactor the way a menu is built? If you want to use a NoSQL database, for instance, you will have to change all the codes, well, inside the function, of course, but also outside the function, because you will have to change the code everywhere this make menu function is called. This will lead to a lot of problems. The order of the parameters also is a very strong constraint. What happens if in the new version of make menu you are required to pass a new parameter? Will you add it to the end? And then with PHP you will be forced to write all the parameters when you want to when you want also to pass the last parameter. So this will be a big problem. sorry, well, I already said it, but this was the way to do 10 years ago. There was no other solution. If we consider the whole app, your existing app does a lot of things. It sends email, it writes log, it does a lot of things, really. Most of these things are technical operations, which can be seen as services. This is the concept of services of Symfony2. And the dependency injection container, as its name explains, contains the services. It is made to hold all the services that are required by an application in order to define them in one single place, be able to configure them, and be able to instantiate them only when required, not before. If you want to have a better vision of the dependency injection container, you can see it like a big array with some particularity, with the possibility to extend this service container, and with the content of this array only being instantiated when it's needed, not before. So how do we use this dependency injection container? How do we integrate it in our system? First, you will have to convert the functionalities that you had into services. And then you will have to create bindings between all the way to use these services and the new way you want to use it. So I will take an example, it will be faster. For example, we have a mailer class. And we were used to send mails, for example, in the save user method, by creating the mailer object and sending the mail with this object. If we save 50 users in this execution, we will instantiate the mailer class 50 times. This is not very performant. And another problem is that here I've created a very simplified version of the mailer, but the mailer must know which SMTP server to use and which password and which username and so on. So the configuration has to be done each time we instantiate the mailer. It's even worse. With the service container, which we can create very easily with the Symfony2 components, if we want to save a user, we just have to pass the dependency injection container, which holds the definition of the service. And when we want to send a mail, we just have to call the mail service, which has been instantiated only one when it was the first time we needed. And for all the other times, it will be the very same mailer object which will be used. This is, of course, very, very useful. Benefits, the most important benefit is not only the performance benefit, it's also a configuration benefit, because the configuration is made at one moment in the application and not everywhere in the application. And also it's possible to override the configuration of the services very easily. There are no singletons. There are no get instance methods and so on. We instantiate the services, and it's very easy to change the services. HTTP Foundation, I will pass very fast on this because we have already seen it. Basically, it's only dealing with request and response, and HTTP Foundation offers all the way to access the HTTP capacities in PHP. Well, it's rather easy to integrate, so I will go. The routing components. Do you remember that we did this? We wrote this 10 years ago. We were searching in the request for a name, and we were loading a file based on this name, so which are doing here. So the file name on the file system had to be the same than the name we used in the URL. It worked, but it was really far from perfect. First, it enforces a certain organization of the code. This can be a problem from a security point of view. If the user tries to change the value which is passed in the URL, it's not really extensible, and we are exposing the technology that we use. We are showing that we are using PHP, or we could use the page rewrite, but no one was doing this. And in that case, one more problem that it's very bad from a SEO point of view. With a routing mechanism, we can get rid of all these problems, and we can improve the situation rather easily. There are two types of routing. Routing, it's the matching between a URL and an action, and it's also the possibility of generating new URLs from a root name. The routing, it's, if you want to understand what it is exactly, you have to see it as an address map of all the entry points of your application. All the supported URLs are referenced in a routing map. And it's a very good concept when you have understood how it works. If you created an application 7 years ago, of course you did not use routing concepts. And you will have to enforce the usage of the routing components. So how to migrate to use the routing component? First, add the component. And in the front controller, or in all the points where you were analyzing the request to understand which is the action to do, everywhere you will have to transform the code to use the routing components. Indeed, it really depends on how your application was made. In that case, it will be really easy because you only have to change this part of the code. In some applications, there are not only one front controller which is exposed, but a lot of PHP files. And in that case, you will have to create from scratch a bootstrap for this. With a routing component, we can also generate URLs, but it's more a benefit after the migration than before. And I'm just finished. I'm sorry because I had to be a lot faster than I thought.